and welcome back to my channel. Today we have the next Halloween-y video in my October series. As you can see by the title of this video, it is plants in costume or disguise. Plants that don't look like the genus that they are. They confuse me. It's kind of like they're constantly wearing a costume. So I figured it'd be perfect because we're all dressing up in different costumes this time of year. Why not talk about plants that do the same? Before I get into it, I just want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you're not new here, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it. Let's get on to these very odd plants. The one that kind of sparked this series initially is this. This is a Peperomia sarcophylla. Yeah, you heard that right, a Peperomia. But it has leaves like it's some sort of anthurium. I feel like the patterning on these leaves is massively anthurium-y. It looks so much more like an anthurium in my mind than a Peperomia. In my mind, the Peperomias are like the really small leafed succulent-y little plants. But this one, it's so broad leafed and it doesn't seem like the same sort of thing. However, it is quite a thick leaf. They are much thicker than an anthurium leaf would be, because they are a bit more of a succulent-y plant than like a semi-epiphyte that anthuriums are. But I still find that they look too similar, like from a glance from far away. If I just had this plant far away and you couldn't touch it, you'd be like, that could easily be an anthurium dorayaki or a crystallinum. Maybe not crystallinum because it doesn't have like the same lobes at the top, but like it's near enough that you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell unless you like really knew your anthuriums. So that is kind of what sparked this whole idea in my brain. Like, I just think it doesn't look like it's meant to be a Peperomia. It's supposed to be an anthurium. I know it's not, but it looks like it should be. Next one I have is this one. This is a Rhaphidophora decursiva, but to me this actually looks like it could be several different genuses, and this one actually is commonly mistaken for several different types of genuses. So you could argue that it might look like a Monstera at this sort of stage. It doesn't really, but once it gets a bit bigger, their leaves mature and grow more splits, and they kind of have a bit more, slightly more round shape. But I honestly think that they look more like a mature epipremnum than they do a Monstera. Because when epipremnums get really mature, their leaves get long, and the fenestrations, especially pinnatums, very similar to how Rhaphidophora decursiva leaves get when they mature. When it's in this sort of more immature state, I find that these leaves look to me more like philodendron leaves, something more like the code 69686 or a like Jerry Horn kind of vibe, those very triloby philodendrons. The philodendron tripartitum is the one that I was seriously thinking of, but I couldn't for the life of me remember it while I was filming. But don't those leaves just look like they're from the exact same plant? I can barely tell them apart. I don't think it looks like a Rhaphidophora. Like I said earlier, this one is also commonly mislabeled as other things. I've seen it called a philodendron dragontail and an epipremnum dragontail. Even though it's neither of those, it is a Rhaphidophora dragontail instead. But I think it is a really cool plant, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one grows in my collection. It is fairly new for me, so I'm not sure, but I've heard they grow up poles very friggin' fast, which I am very excited for. Next, we have these two, which are also fairly new propagations in my home. These are Senecio macroglossus, the non-variegated and the variegated one. But they look to me like English ivy, but like the shape of these leaves, tell me that doesn't look like it is just a bit of English ivy. And they sort of vine in a similar way too, but it's a Senecio, which is like much more succulent-y and thicker, waxier leaves than the English ivy is. Like, but you really cannot tell that without feeling it in person. I feel like if I saw a picture of this, like either of these, I'd be like, oh yeah, you've got a cup of English ivy. Like, that leaf right there is so ivy-like. I cannot believe it. Someone sent it to me in a like gift box, which I massively appreciate because I didn't know this plant existed. But I'm really excited to see if I can get them to grow well for me and whether or not they trail down or kind of make a sort of bush or what. I guess we'll figure that out in time. But they're just such fun, weirdo little plants that look like ivy but aren't. I honestly can't comment on the difficulty of these ones though either, because they are fairly new to me and they are just propagations. Though I've not had any issues with this one so far. You can see it is rooting. That there is a root. So they seem to be doing absolutely fine. I'll have to do some research with these ones and see what sort of soil they like so I can pot them up fairly soon, hopefully. But yeah, they're so weird. They look like English ivy, but they're completely not. They're like very different in sort of texture mostly. I don't know if my plant very much so looks like this. This is a cast iron plant or an Aspidistra elatior, but I find that they look so freaking similar to peace lilies. I feel like this kind of looks like a bit more of a sparse peace lily without any flowers in it. If you get a cast iron plant that has like that's very, very bushy, very full, it looks so much like a peace lily without any flowers on it. And I know people get peace lilies for the flowers on them, but for me, I'm not the biggest fan of the flowers. That's just not my sort of jam with those kind of plants. So this is kind of like the perfect alternative. It's also a whole lot easier to take care of than a peace lily. They are so freaking hardy. They can withstand almost anything. That's why they're called cast iron plants, because they're like so hardy and tolerant that they're kind of like cast iron. But I find that they've got very similar leaf shape, structure, and color. They are a little bit thicker of leaves and slightly more rigid. You can see they don't kind of go down as much as a peace lily might. These ones don't faint like a peace lily would, but they are also... Hey, down please. Cleo. Cleo, baby. Down please. Thank you, baby. Come on. You can sit on my lap. Yeah, baby. Say hello. It's been a while since you've been on here. Sorry if the camera's not quite in the same spot, but I'm pretty sure I was done speaking about this one anyway. I think they're peace lily enough for me, as someone who doesn't particularly like peace lilies very much. Up next we have this one here. This is a variegated Acecanthanthus or variegated lipstick plant, but to me this looks so Hoya-y. Like, I think it's just the waxiness, shininess of the leaves and the sort of splashy variegation on them. Like, that, tell me that's not a Hoya leaf. It looks exactly like several different types of Hoya leaves I have in my collection. Though this one is a bit more white variegated than silver, and the leaves aren't as like thick as some Hoya types are, like the Carnosa. It is still very, very similar. It also has similar sort of hairs on the stem and leaves that a lot of Hoyas have. So it furthers the point that this, to me, looks like a Hoya. I know it's not, but in the same vein, definitely in the same vein. And if you're going for a similar vibe to Hoya, this might be a good option. I don't have tons of experience, again, with Acecanthanthus. I've had this one for not very long. Ooh, when did I get this? Yeah, it was April because a friend gave it to me then. But I've kind of had it in this cup of soil for a little while. Obviously it's in a nursery pot, but I don't know if I'm doing right by this one or not. It does have very, very high variegation, this one in particular, so I'm very glad about that. I probably though could put it in a little bit better of light because I would love to get back to this sort of original leaf size rather than these sort of smaller ones. I'm not sure if these will end up getting bigger or not. We'll see in time, but I just think it's so Hoya-y for something that's not a Hoya. I need to be very careful with this one because it's very stringy and Cleo might go after it. So this here is a string of turtles, which in my mind should be closely related to the string of hearts, string of spades, that kind of thing, because it has very, very, very similar vibes, but it's actually a Peperomia, not a Sarasota at all. So I was definitely confused by that when I first got it. I didn't realize it was a Peperomia. I think this was actually my first successful Peperomia, but I didn't know it was a Peperomia, and it grows so differently to how like a lot of the other Peperomia I have grow that I just wasn't expecting it. It's so freaking traily. Like, look at this. It's grown very, very well for me. And the only thing that I could distinguish it as a Peperomia with is the sort of blooms it has, the very Peperomia-y flowers that grow at the end of these vines. But other than that, it looks so much more like a string of hearts. And I kind of treat it much more like a string of hearts than I do my Peperomias. I didn't give it any extra humidity that I've done with my other Peperomias. It lives in my home like it is a Sarasota rather than a Peperomia. But look at that. Even the designs on the leaves, oh! Cleo literally just went for that. I knew she would. Even the sort of patterns on the leaves to me look much more like string of hearts in their vibe than Peperomia. But alas, here we are. This crazy long, really long Peperomia that I need to now put outside of Cleo's reach. And then the last one on my list is Monstera dubia. So this is the bottom section of the one I recently sorted out in my plant tours video, but I don't feel like getting that out from like behind all of that stuff. So this one will have to be the one that I show you. But I think especially when it's shingling on this plank, it doesn't look like a Monstera to me. When they are in this sort of juvenile form, I think they look so much more like a Rhaphidophora cryptanthus, I think it's called, or even like a shingling syndapsis, because those do shingle as well given the right conditions, specifically very high humidity. But this does not look like a Monstera. I think to me it most closely resembles a Siltobacana, but even that, the form is so incredibly different, and that doesn't shingle, that I can almost not see how those are related. That being said, when Monstera dubia get more mature, they kind of stop shingling as much and grow fenestrations. So Claire has a really great example of her Monstera dubia, which is super mature compared to this. And it has beautiful fenestrations and doesn't shingle in the same way. And I feel like that at that point, yeah, it kind of looks a lot more like a Monstera, but at this point, nah, this is definitely like a shingling syndapsis. You cannot tell me otherwise. It's got that same silvery sort of variegation that syndapsis have, plus the super shinglingness of a Rhaphidophora cryptantha. But even that, I feel like that Rhaphidophora doesn't look anything like other Rhaphidophora, like the Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. So it's all a little bit confusing. And I know there's no need for the plants to look like a specific thing in each genus, but I feel like these ones look definitely like other genuses more than their sort of original genus, if that makes sense. So that is it. Those are all of the plants that I have in my collection that look like they are in costume in disguise, look like some other random genus that's not theirs. Hey, baby. Hey. I am definitely curious to know if there are others you think belong on this list, others that you find look so far from what their genus is that they should be something else. Obviously, I'm not talking on a cellular, molecular level. I get that that's why they need to be where they are, but in terms of looks and growth pattern and stuff like that, I feel like these ones way off. So I'm curious to know if you have any others on your list that you think should belong on this one as well. But yeah, that is it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. Other Halloween spooky videos you'd like me to do in the future, let me know and I can try and get them made for you this month. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching and we will see you next time. Keep growing. Bye!